You've met them. Maybe you're still with them. They never yell, never threaten, never hurt you directly, and yet after every conversation you feel smaller, more exhausted, a little more confused about who you are and what you're worth. They're not violent. They're fragile. They don't ask for too much. They simply need, constantly, endlessly. And at first, you feel honored to be the one they trust, the one they lean on, the one who understands. But slowly, almost imperceptibly, their pain becomes your responsibility. Their chaos becomes your burden, and your peace disappears. These people don't look like villains. They look broken, and that's what makes them so dangerous, because they've mastered the art of emotional guilt. You don't even know it's happening. You just start feeling like a bad person when you don't show up for them, when you say no, when you protect yourself. That's the trap. Carl Jung once said, "Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to a better understanding of ourselves." But what if it's not just irritation? What if what you're feeling is depletion, the slow erosion of your self-worth disguised as compassion? This person plays the victim always. Life is always happening to them. They're always misunderstood, always on the edge of collapse. And you, the sensitive, kind-hearted, spiritually aware one, you feel called to help, to fix, to rescue. But here's the truth. You're not rescuing anyone. You're being emotionally hijacked. They cry without tears, apologize without change, collapse into your arms only to drain the last drop of empathy from your body. And when you're empty, when you finally say, "I need space," they shift. Suddenly you are the villain. Suddenly you've abandoned them. You've become just like everyone else. And there it is, the real face behind the mask. Not weakness, but manipulation. These are the emotional parasites that Jung warned us about. People who refuse to meet their own shadow and instead project it onto anyone willing to carry it. You weren't chosen for your strength. You were chosen for your guilt, for your over-functioning, for your pattern of confusing exhaustion with loyalty. Think about it. How many times have you answered messages you didn't want to? How many times have you cancelled plans for someone's emergency? How often have you felt obligated to show up, not because you wanted to, but because the emotional cost of not showing up was too high? This isn't empathy, it's enslavement. Real empathy comes from choice, from presence, from wholeness. But this is emotional debt collection. And the longer you stay in this dynamic, the more you begin to lose pieces of yourself. You forget what your own needs are. You silence your voice to protect someone who doesn't even hear it. You suppress your anger, not because you've forgiven them, but because they've made it unsafe for you to feel it. And that's when you start to change. If this message hit home for you, if you've ever felt drained, small, or manipulated under the disguise of love or guidance, share your truth in the comments. Let us know you're here. And if you're ready for more clarity like this, don't forget to subscribe. This space was made for you. You become quieter, more tired. You start to second-guess your instincts. You walk on eggshells. You try to say things the right way so they don't spiral. You carry the emotional weight of two people, hoping that somehow it will make them whole. But they don't want to be whole. They want to be held, permanently, by you, on your knees. And that's not healing. That's emotional codependence with spiritual makeup. Jung believed that the shadow is not evil. It's unconscious. But when someone refuses to look inward, to take responsibility, to sit with their own pain without projecting it onto others, they become a danger. Not because they're bad, but because they're lazy with their own soul. And they make you pay the price. So how do you escape this? You begin by seeing it. You admit that not every person who needs love deserves access to yours. You recognize that you can be kind without being consumed. You learn to say, "I see your pain, but I won't bleed to prove it." That's the hardest part, because this person will cry, will guilt trip, will pull out every memory of how much you've meant to them. But don't fall for the illusion. They never loved the real you. They loved the part of you that kept them from drowning. But who holds you when you're sinking? That's the question this video is asking. And if you're feeling your chest tighten while listening to this, it's not just because it's true, it's because deep down you already knew. You felt it. You've ignored it. But not anymore. Because the real journey, the one Jung described as individuation, begins the moment you stop being someone else's emotional anchor and start being your own foundation. You are not a rescue mission. You are not a therapist on demand. You are not a sponge for unresolved trauma. You are a person, a soul, and you deserve peace that doesn't come with a hidden invoice. In the next part, we'll go even deeper, because there's another type of danger waiting quietly in your life, and this one doesn't cry or collapse. It waits. It watches. It pulls your strings in silence. The silent manipulator isn't needy. They're patient, and they've already learned how to weaponize your guilt. Get ready. What comes next will make you question every connection you once thought was love. They don't raise their voice. They don't insult you. They don't beg for attention. In fact, they barely say anything at all. And that's exactly how they control you. The most dangerous person in your life might not be the one who openly disrespects you. It might be the one who quietly rewrites the rules of connection, not by force, but through emotional silence. You can't point to what they did wrong. You just feel wrong around them. They create distance without explanation. They disappear when you need them. They give you half presents, vague responses, empty stares, and suddenly you find yourself overthinking everything. Did I say something wrong? Should I apologize? Maybe I'm just too sensitive. That's the hook. This is not indifference. It's strategic detachment. It's emotional manipulation so advanced, it doesn't even look like manipulation. Carl Jung believed that what we don't bring to consciousness will rule us from the shadows. And that's exactly how these people operate. From the shadows. They let you do all the emotional work. They never directly hurt you. They make you hurt yourself by constantly second-guessing your worth. This kind of person trains you, slowly, subtly. They condition you to associate their absence with your failure. You stop asking for clarity because every time you do, they act like you are the unstable one. Why are you so sensitive? Why do you need constant reassurance? They don't answer. They reflect your questions back at you until you become the problem. It's called emotional gaslighting. And it's not loud, it's not chaotic, it's cold. The silent manipulator survives off your reaction to their indifference. They know that pulling away creates more anxiety than confrontation ever could. So they weaponize silence, they weaponize detachment, and they disguise it all as peace, independence, or emotional maturity. But here's the truth. It's not maturity, it's control. You find yourself chasing validation. You want them to open up, to explain, to care. But the more you chase, the colder they become, and you confuse this withdrawal for strength, because in your mind, only the emotionally powerful can stay so unaffected. But this isn't power. It's avoidance masked as dominance. People like this rarely form deep emotional bonds, not because they're evolved, but because they've learned that distance gives them power. The less you know what they feel, the more you want to earn their closeness. And that need becomes your prison. They punish with silence, reward with breadcrumbs. They vanish during your low points, then return casually, expecting you to be grateful for their return. And you are. Not because they did anything special, but because you're emotionally starving. They've conditioned you to associate neglect with normal. This is where it gets dangerous. You start adapting to their rhythm. You stop expressing your needs. You shrink your emotions. You stop asking for more because every time you do, they pull away, and you've learned to fear that withdrawal more than the emptiness of staying quiet. This is not love. This is emotional domination. And the worst part, they never take responsibility. You could present them with evidence, timelines, pain, and they'd still find a way to twist the story, to make you look unstable. I never asked you to do all that, they'll say. You're just overreacting. But they know. Deep down, they know. This is all intentional. Carl Jung often spoke about the persona, the mask we wear to survive in society. The silent manipulator wears a mask of stoicism, but behind it is a deep fear of vulnerability. They can't face their own emotional chaos, so they make others drown in it, and they do it quietly, with sophistication, with precision. They won't scream at you. They'll remove affection until you scream at yourself. And when you finally explode, when the silence becomes too loud and you crack, they look at you with cold, detached eyes. See? This is why I don't open up. And just like that, the cycle begins again. You feel like the broken one. You start to apologize. You start to beg. And they, calm, composed, unreadable, regain control. But that ends now. The first step to breaking this cycle is to see it for what it is. Stop interpreting their coldness as strength. It's not. Real strength isn't the absence of emotion. It's the ability to feel without control, The ability to connect without domination. The ability to communicate without playing games. You don't owe loyalty to people who punish you with distance. You don't owe patience to people who refuse to speak truthfully. Silence is only beautiful when it brings peace. If it creates anxiety, it's not silence, it's warfare. And here's the shift. Once you stop reacting to the silence, it loses power. Once you stop chasing explanations, they lose control. Once you realize that you don't need their validation to be whole, you become untouchable. You shift the dynamic entirely. The only thing that breaks the grip of the silent manipulator is presence. Your presence, your awareness, your decision to no longer dance with ghosts who refuse to meet you in the light. You are not too much, you are not crazy, you are not unstable, you are someone who's finally waking up. And in the next part, we'll expose a different kind of threat, one that doesn't drain you with silence but poisons you with praise. The person who claps when you win, but secretly hopes you'll fall. The competitor dressed as a companion. Get ready. We're about to reveal how fake support is just sabotage in disguise. They smile when you succeed, they clap when you win, they tell you they're proud of you, but something feels off. You sense it, but you can't quite name it. There's a tension behind their encouragement, a strange discomfort in their praise. And later, when you're alone, you start to feel guilty for achieving anything at all. This is what it feels like to be close to someone who doesn't want you to fail, but needs you to never outgrow them. These people don't openly sabotage you. They don't insult you or stand in your way. No, they disguise their resentment as subtle jokes, as friendly advice, as passive-aggressive concern. And you keep them close because they feel familiar, because you once mistook their proximity for loyalty. But here's the truth. This person doesn't support you. They're monitoring you, measuring you, waiting. Carl Jung wrote about the shadow, the part of ourselves we hide, repress, and deny. And when that shadow is envy, it becomes venomous in secret. The most dangerous kind of envy doesn't come from strangers. It comes from the people who know you best and who can't stand to see you become someone they don't recognize. They loved the version of you who struggled, the one who asked for advice, the one who was always one step behind. That version made them feel important, in control, superior even. But now that you're healing, evolving, rising, they don't know where they stand. And instead of rising with you, they begin to pull away. Not physically, psychologically. You'll hear things like, "Don't let success change you. You used to be more humble. Just remember where you came from." Each statement feels like concern, but each one is a leash, because they're not afraid you'll change. They're afraid you'll stop needing them. This is not support. This is emotional surveillance. Have you ever recognized one of these patterns in someone close to you, or maybe even in yourself? Leave a comment, and let's talk about it openly. Growth starts with awareness, and if this content speaks to your journey, hit that subscribe button and join a community that's not afraid to face the truth, and you'll feel it most when something good happens in your life. You'll want to share your joy, your progress, your breakthrough, but when you do, their energy shifts. They become quiet, dismissive. Suddenly, they want to talk about themselves. Or worse, they downplay your achievement. "Oh, that's nice. But have you thought about what might go wrong?" You start to feel like maybe you are being arrogant. Maybe you should shrink a little. Be less much. Be safer. Be smaller. But that's the trap. Because this person thrives on your hesitation. They need you uncertain so they can feel stable. It's a form of covert dominance, and it's deadly to your growth. You'll notice it in the way they always seem to match your stories with one of their own, just slightly bigger, slightly better, slightly more tragic or impressive. They can't let you take the spotlight, not even for a second, because deep down, they're not celebrating you. They're competing with you, and the longer you ignore it, the more it infects you. You begin to filter your victories. You water yourself down. You stop dreaming out loud. You start making yourself smaller just to keep the peace. But what peace are you really protecting? Jung would call this a betrayal of the self, because in trying to preserve the connection, you're severing your connection to who you're becoming. This is the hidden cost of keeping a competitor as a companion. And here's what makes it worse. You love this person, or at least you did. You've shared history, moments, laughter. Maybe it's family. Maybe it's someone you called a best friend. Maybe it's a partner. And that emotional history makes it even harder to see the truth, that they don't love who you're becoming. They love who you were. Who you were didn't trigger their insecurity. Who you were kept them safe. But growth threatens every dynamic built on imbalance. And now that you're stepping into power, you're disrupting the unspoken agreement that they would always be ahead, or that you'd always stay beneath. You're not doing anything wrong, you're just rising. But to someone who never did their own inner work, your evolution feels like abandonment. They confuse your expansion with betrayal, and rather than face their own stagnation, they start to resent your progress. Jung believed that envy is a confession, not of hatred, but of helplessness. And that's what this person is really showing you: their inability to rise with you, their refusal to face their own unrealized potential, their fear that your wings make their cage more obvious. And that's not your fault. You don't owe anyone your silence to protect their insecurity. You don't have to shrink so someone else can breathe. You are allowed to outgrow people, and you are allowed to keep growing, even if it means letting go of the ones who can't. But how do you deal with this? You start by no longer hiding your light. You speak your truth without apology. You celebrate without guilt. You detach from the need for their validation. And when their true feelings show, when the mask slips, you believe them. Because nothing is lonelier than sharing success with someone who secretly wishes you hadn't succeeded at all. You don't need fake supporters. You need soul allies. People who can clap without comparison, who rise with you, who challenge you without resenting your strength, who feel safer around your power, not threatened by it. And if that sounds rare, it's because it is. But that's the price of growth. You don't just lose people, you lose illusions. You stop calling envy love. You stop calling competition friendship. And in that honesty, something liberating happens. Your energy stops being divided. You stop scanning for approval. You stop seeking permission. You move forward, freely, fully. And in the next part, we'll go even deeper. Because sometimes the real threat isn't someone who pretends to support you. It's someone who pulls you back into the very version of yourself you fought to escape. Not because they hate you, but because they're addicted to the old you, the you who was small, confused, easy to manage. We're going to talk about the emotional mirrors in your life, the people who activate your wounds just to keep you from rising. Prepare yourself, because the next part will expose how regression is often disguised as comfort, and how your greatest transformation may require becoming unrecognizable to those who never wanted to see the real you. They don't yell, they don't insult you, they don't try to control you directly. They do something far more dangerous. They remind you of who you used to be and make you feel like that's all you'll ever be. You sit across from them and suddenly, your confidence shrinks. Your voice changes. You question yourself. The clarity you've worked so hard to build starts to dissolve. You were feeling strong, steady, maybe even healed, but around them, you fall back into patterns you thought you outgrew. That's not an accident. That's a mirror. Carl Jung said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." What he didn't always say out loud, but what his work makes clear, is that some people are your unconscious. They reflect back the version of you that still lives inside your unresolved wounds, and they activate that version to keep you stuck. These people don't need to insult you. They just give you that look, that dismissive tone, that familiar passive-aggressive sarcasm, and suddenly you're 12 years old again. Or 15, or back in that toxic relationship. You regress without realizing it, because they know how to push the buttons that take you back to the version of yourself who didn't yet know how to fight back. They don't relate to the new you. They're addicted to the old one. Why? Because the old you was easier. Easier to manipulate. Easier to guilt. Easier to outshine. Easier to keep under control. And even if they don't do it consciously, they feel the shift when you start showing up differently, when you start drawing boundaries, when you start asking for more, when you stop apologizing for existing. It's not that they hate you, it's that they depended on your brokenness. You were a role in their story, the weaker one, the emotional one, the helper, the one who stayed quiet when things were unfair, the one who said sorry first, the one who made them feel better about themselves just by being small. Now that you're not playing that role, they don't know what to do with you. And so, they try to pull you back into it. And you feel it every time you say no and they say, "You've changed." Yes, you have, but they haven't. So now every interaction becomes a subtle war between who you're becoming and who they remember you to be. And it's exhausting. You find yourself explaining your growth, over-justifying your new boundaries, dimming your light to avoid their judgment, shrinking your truth so they don't feel uncomfortable. That's the trap. Jung called this the conflict between persona and self. The persona is the mask you wore to be accepted. The self is who you are when no one is watching. And when you start living from the self instead of the mask, you disrupt every relationship that was built on the mask. That's why it feels like you're losing people. You are. But what you're really losing are the people who were only attached to your disguise. And those who loved the disguise will always try to bring it back. They'll do it by reminding you of past failures, by treating you like you're still unreliable, by laughing at your new habits, your goals, your dreams. You're really doing that now? Wow. Look at you all enlightened. Must be nice to suddenly be so evolved. It sounds like a joke, but it's not. It's resentment. It's the shadow of someone who refuses to grow, trying to drag you back down so they don't have to face their own refusal. And here's the painful part. These people might be family. They might be old friends, people who were there for your worst moments but who are now incapable of supporting your best ones, because those best moments remind them of everything they've been avoiding. This is why you feel guilty for changing. It's why you hesitate before showing your full self, because deep down you're afraid of being too much for people who once loved you when you were at your lowest. But let's be honest, if they only love you when you're broken, it was never love. It was comfort. It was control. It was dependency. And now that you're healing, they feel abandoned. Not because you betrayed them, but because you stopped betraying yourself. So what do? You let the discomfort rise. You hold the silence when they try to bait you back. You stop over-explaining. You stop apologizing for your transformation. And you realize anyone who needs you to be broken to feel connected to you was never connected to you, just to your wounds. And you're not your wounds anymore. We don't heal in silence. So if any part of this resonated with you, write it below. Let others know they're not alone. And if you want more deep, honest reflections like this, go ahead and subscribe. This is just the beginning of something much bigger. You don't have to hate these people. You don't have to cut them off with rage, but you do have to protect your new self, even if that means loving them from a distance. This is the part of growth no one talks about, the grief. The grief of outgrowing someone you once couldn't imagine life without. The grief of realizing that becoming your real self means leaving behind relationships built on your false one. It hurts, but it's necessary. Because what waits for you on the other side of this grief is freedom. The freedom to be seen fully, to be loved without performance, to be respected without submission. That is your birthright. But it comes with a cost. You have to be willing to lose those who only knew how to love the weaker version of you. Carl Jung said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." But what he didn't say is that becoming that person might cost you everyone who needed you to stay lost. And in the next part, we'll face one of the most deceptive dangers of all, the spiritual manipulator, the one who speaks of peace, but thrives on power, the one who uses language of healing to control, the one who hides domination under the mask of light. Get ready, because sometimes the most dangerous person in your life is the one who sounds the most enlightened. They say all light is good, but that's not always true, because sometimes light is a mask, and behind that mask, hidden in carefully chosen words and a calm tone, is control. Quiet, calculated, dressed in spiritual vocabulary and disguised as wisdom. This is the most deceptive danger of all, the spiritual manipulator. They don't yell, they enlighten, they don't dominate, they guide, they don't argue, they correct you with serene arrogance. And before you even realize what's happening, you're no longer allowed to feel anger, to speak your truth, or to challenge their authority, because to them, your emotions are just signs that you're unevolved. This person hides behind love and light, but their silence is punishment. Their advice is subtle shaming, and their aura of superiority is nothing more than ego that's learned how to dress in white. Carl Jung warned us that the most dangerous persona is the one that believes its own mask. The person who becomes so identified with the role of healer, teacher, guru, or guide that they stop seeing their own shadow. And when that happens, they project that shadow onto you. You become the triggered one, the immature one, the unawakened soul who simply doesn't understand how true peace works. But you're not confused. You're being gaslit. Real spiritual growth doesn't demand submission. It encourages self-discovery. It doesn't silence your truth. It honors it. And anyone who tells you that evolved people don't get angry or sad or confused is not enlightened. They're emotionally repressed, and they're trying to use your fear of inadequacy to maintain their sense of control. Because here's the trick. When someone claims to be above you spiritually and you believe it, you surrender your intuition, your fire, your will. You stop questioning and start following. Not because you're weak, but because they made doubt look like sin. They speak with softness, but what they're really saying is, don't think for yourself. And so you stay. You stay in that community, that relationship, that mentorship. You swallow your truth. You avoid conflict. You silence your pain in the name of inner peace, but you don't feel peaceful. You feel suppressed, you feel hollow, and you don't know why. It's because you've internalized the lie that being spiritual means being small, that love means self-erasure, that boundaries are ego, that disagreement is unawareness, that power, your own power, is dangerous. But Carl Jung taught that individuation, the process of becoming who you truly are, requires you to face your own darkness, and to face it alone, without someone translating your truth for you, without someone demanding obedience in the name of growth. No one can walk that path for you, and anyone who insists that they must walk it with you, while subtly controlling how you walk, is not a guide. They're a prison. You'll know them by how they respond to your resistance. If you set a boundary and they call it an ego issue, run. If you express a need and they shame you for not being conscious enough, run. If they demand gratitude for healing you, while slowly eroding your confidence, run. Because the light they offer is not clarity, it's camouflage, and your soul is not meant to live in a cage made of affirmations and incense. Your soul is meant to burn. You are allowed to say no to teachers. You are allowed to question authority. You are allowed to walk away from anyone who makes you feel spiritually inferior. Growth does not require subjugation. Healing does not require hierarchy. You are not less than anyone who quotes more books than you, who meditates more hours than you, who speaks in quieter tones than you, because none of that matters if their presence makes you feel small. True light does not cast a shadow over others. It shines beside them. And you are allowed to shine, loudly, imperfectly, fiercely, fully. Carl Jung said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are, not who someone else told you to be. Not the version of you that is more convenient to others, but the real you, the bold you, the wild you, the powerful you. And if becoming that person means being misunderstood, walking alone, or disappointing those who once called themselves your guides, then let them be disappointed. Let them go, because your freedom is more important than their comfort. This is the end of the 5 most dangerous people you must avoid. But in truth, this is not just about others. It's about reclaiming your space, your mind, your spirit, and now that you see clearly it's time to keep walking, there's a new video waiting for you on the screen right now, and it goes deeper into the hidden patterns we all carry that sabotage our peace, our worth, and our relationships. Don't stop here. Click now, because the next step of your healing is too important to wait. And if this journey touched something inside you, leave a comment. Let your voice echo. Say, I reclaim my light. Let's see how many of us are finally ready to break free. And don't forget to subscribe. We are building a space for those who are done living small. See you in the next video.